There we go.
Okay, so hey everyone, my name's Mary. I am 25. I've been in Degrassi fandom since 2010, since the Boy Report was airing live. Now, I've technically watched some episodes of season 8 or 9 before the Boiling Point started airing, but that was on the every Degrassi ever marathon. And it was actually the boiling point where I actually started getting really invested into Degrassi. My favorite characters, my top five Degrassi characters are Marisol, Eli, Liberty, Manny, and Claire. And my top two Degrassi ships are Eclair and Marimo. I am black. I am black, and I am born and raised in Philly.
Right. I'm JC, I use she, they pronouns. I am 23 years old. If you ever get my age, just look at the year. And I've been the Degrassi fan since I was 11. I joined at the end of, I really started watching at the end of season 10. So, Drop the World. So I saw Drop the World, the first Eclair breakup. Fun fact, my mom almost banned me from watching it because of Eli's car crash, but we don't need to get into that right now. But I've been like a fan since 2011. My favorite Degrassi characters are Eli, Dave, Adam, Fiona, Manny. Also love Spinner. I love still only forgetting all my favorite Degrassi characters, but I love Spinner. I love Maya. I love Tori. Quite a few Degrassi characters that I do really like. And I'm also black. I'm from Detroit, and my favorite Degrassi ships are Van Derner, Drianka, Eclair, and Fimogen.
Absolutely, I love your taste. Now, the reason why that I started this podcast is as a black woman who's been in a fandom for going on 13 years at this point. Holy crap. I have always known the Degrassi fandom was racist. A lot of it is because Degrassi itself was racist in a lot of areas, but the fandom is certainly bad. Is certainly certain this fandom certainly encouraged and enabled it and participated even all the way into 2013. And as anyone who knows me knows that my entire brand at this point, since I became active in the fandom again in 2020, is protecting and defending and loving on the Black female players on Degrassi. And if my point of view is that if people can write like essays and spin analysis and loving all the non-black characters, no matter how underdeveloped or badly written they are, how lacking of morals they are. I can do the same with the black female characters. And this podcast is dedicated to the black female characters, and it's for us black it's for black girls in the Degrassi fandom, you, me included, and um, it's a podcast for the black female character about the black female characters for black women in the fandom. But of course, everyone is welcome to listen as long as you're not going to be weird about it.
Of course, of course. I think what's important about this podcast is also like the fact that, like you said, Degrassi has been racist in many ways, and Degrassi has always, both the show and its fans have really projected Degrassi as this very progressive show and whatnot. In some ways it is, but also it's very important to realize that it's very important to realize that in a lot of ways it's hasn't been a progressive show, and that it has been it has a lot of issues, specifically when it comes to characters of color, specifically black characters and especially black female characters. So it's very important for us to really recognize that and realize that this show really isn't perfect and whatnot.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I always roll my eyes when people give give Degrassi like all these like ally awards for like the racism plots, and it's like, okay, but what did they generally do for Black people that moves the conversation? Like, don't get me wrong, like I love Degrassi for how many groundbreaking storylines they did and how relatable and realistic the teen characters are, and how there was plenty of good writing for several storylines, but when it comes to like BIPOC and AAPI characters, it just flatlines. But especially the Black female characters, like the misogynoir on the show was crazy, and it enabled the fandom to be as misogynistic as it is right now.
Yeah, and I think like it's really this spot. Really like I think also this is also for a lot of Black Degrassi fans to eternalize that, because I've seen several characters like Marisol and Dave get hated on by even Black fans of Degrassi to prop up white characters and whatnot, and like I really feel like me, like I said, I've watched the rest since I was 11, and I remember the Shantae jokes. I remember the whole like, oh, she's been here for so long, I hate her because she's been here for like 40 years or whatever. And like I remember as a kid, like I didn't think anything of them and whatnot. And then when I grew older, I'm like thinking, why was that such a recurring joke, why was that so funny and all that stuff. And I feel like a lot of Black Degrassi fans, as we've seen, also eternalize that like that type of anti-Blackness when it comes to like the way they perceive Black characters, because like there's even been times with me where I like look at a way where I like watch a scene like later on, like for example, like the way Fiona talked about Shantae in Try Honesty, I believe that's the episode. And like I just say, hey, that doesn't exactly feel right, that doesn't exactly look right. So it really feels like I feel like both of our experiences that like as we get older we realize there are like there are several scenes that just didn't sit right when it came to like Black female characters and whatnot.
Yeah, absolutely. Like the Coonery and Degrassi fandom is wild. Like so many of it, like I seen like I mean generally like there's just the phrase all skin folk are not kinfolk, and like it is true because a lot of the worst takes I ever see about Black characters are from Black people, like that, like the one like black people saying that, oh, I never forgave Hazel for how she cheered for Riza, or Black people saying I wish we had more attractive Black girls on the show than Shantae and Hazel, or calling Liberty's making fun of Liberty for having quote unquote fish lips, saying that Marisol was a slut and whore, of being a Manny Santos fan. Uh, it's just crazy saying that Dave, well, dragging Dave for being horrible about while being a Ban Johnny and Ban Darko stan. Like it's just so weird. Or like defending Lola over Shay. Like it's just we need to do better. And like the thing is about Black people and fandoms who are like coons, like they think that they're special because they don't think like us. Like they'll say, well, I'm Black and I disagree, I'm Black and I agree with non-Black people, and so ha ha ha. And it's like, okay, do you want a doggy biscuit, you want a banana?
Yeah, and something like I had to learn, that I like eventually learned myself, is the idea of reclaiming like representation and whatnot. I actually did my thesis in college about it. But like the idea of like reclaiming representation, because a lot of like I see a lot of like Black people, Black people, like Black fans saying like oh well, like the show didn't give us good representation, so I'm not gonna like try to like these characters and whatnot. I'm not gonna try to really like claim these characters because the show wrote them bad, so why should I care about them? And it's because like for a lot of like for a lot of the, even if like a character may be written poorly, or if it's just maybe they are unlikable, they may be like the only representation like these like like fans of this show have, and they would like to reclaim those characters, because it's not those characters fault or the fault of the actors who display those characters, who portray those characters, that they were treated so that their characters were treated so poorly. And it's just like, and like, like, yeah, like I can understand, like, maybe it is valid to just not, like, really, like, care about, like, a character, like, just want better representation, so you don't really want to, like, appraise a character that was written poorly. But a lot of us like to reclaim those characters for ourselves and maybe think of that new ways that we could, like, fix those characters, or we can, like, really love those characters, or give those characters better storyline. Like, time, like, to shout out my co-host, like, her fix Smells Like Teen Spirit is absolutely phenomenal, and does a great job at giving characters, like, especially Marisol, giving Marisol, like, a great storyline, as well as, like, Dave, and a lot of characters who just didn't get the time of day.
I love the Smells Like Teen Spirit shout out. Everybody read it. Is on AO3 under my username Black Sansa Stark. And yes, it's like somebody in myself, like, I mean, internalized blackness, anti-blackness is hard to get over. Like, even now, as I become more conscious, I'm still unlearning, and like I do, like I relate to how I feel, how I felt peer pressure to like agree with the bad takes about black characters to an extent, but I credit wiki user Set Rob off for lighting that flame under me, inspiring me to like never like completely stoop that low to be like to like hate all the black characters like that, but to extent I just never felt I didn't feel encouraged to defend them in online spaces until I became active in the fam as an adult. And it's hard because as an autistic person, I don't like conflict. That's another issue, is that I have issues with standing up for myself, but like I'm learning to do so more now, because even though my instinct is to shut down, there are sometimes where I can't. And on the internet, where this person it cannot fly over to my city and beat me up, I absolutely can tell them off. No repercussions.
Yeah, and of course, like, character, like, for example, Dave being probably my all-time favorite Degrassi character at this point. I was really kind of like, of course, I was kind of afraid to, like, really show my praise about him. I was like, kind of like, I feel like I was kind of gaslit to, like, not really liking Dave or Ben Durner, which is my all-time favorite Degrassi ship, of course. Into like him, Mari made me very comfortable on Twitter, to, like, make to show praise for this character. I can't thank her more. I can't thank her enough for that. And, like, really also kind of like you said, ignite that flame, like, ignite that flame inside me, and just really, like, be like, show love for these characters. And in a way, it's kind of funny, like, seeing, like, a lot of the hate for the character and kind of standing up for that character, specifically Dave, made me like the character so much more, which is funny because, like, you can, like, because, like, these, like, stands will get into your mentions talking about, oh, this character was the worst person, and I'm just like, you're kind of making me like him more. So
Yeah, it's like, well, you stand Owen, so maybe just go like rot somewhere. Like, I don't, at this point, like, I don't care about being nice because people haven't been nice to me. Like, we few people have been very mean to me over Van Durner. So at this point, like, I don't care about people making people feel okay for shipping the Degrassi couples I hate.
exactly, exactly.
Like,
All right.
so to start off our podcast, to get like real deep into what to start off with the main reason that was the first topic of discussion for our podcast. Let's talk about one of the most prominent black female characters in the entire franchise, and the one that most Degrassi fans under 40 know about, Miss Liberty Elizabeth Van Zandt.
That's such a good name.
It is.
When I
It's
was 11, I wanted to name my daughter Liberty.
Liberty's iconic. It's perfect for her.
Exactly. All right. So, do you want to start your thoughts on Liberty overall, or you want me to start?
I'll start, and I'm going to pull up my outline of my thoughts on Liberty.
Okay.
She's one of my all-time favorite Degrassi characters, for starters. In fact, before my love for Marisol Lewis grew greater and greater each month, she was my number one favorite Degrassi character, but now she sits at a still pretty strong number three. What makes me love Liberty? I can relate to her so much as an educated, opinionated, nerdy black girl that is also prone to being awkward and a social outcast. She's so stubborn and argumentative, and so am I. Like, there's so many scenes. Sometimes it's hard to watch Liberty in the early seasons because she was so cringy. But that's because I'm looking at myself, and in fact, it makes me defend her more at the same time. Because I'm like, if you're going to call Liberty a loser, you're calling me a loser, and I'll be under your bed. there's plenty of there's plenty of other Degrassi characters I throughout the franchise I can relate to, but she's literally me on screen. Like, only Connor can come close, only because he is explicitly black and autistic like I am. Liberty is someone who went through so much crap during her time at Degrassi, but never gave up on her goals, remained strong and set on herself, and had a razor sharp tongue when she wanted to use it. The girl was elected school president twice and managed to serve her first term while being 15, 16, and pregnant. Literally, no other president in a franchise was as freaking dedicated in that position. She's so ambitious, so determined, and didn't let anything stop her. Only wish I was that fierce in high school, and even now. Seeing her next class as a law student makes me so proud of her. And I know for sure that she's a badass lawyer right now that can go toe to toe with Annalise Keating, or perhaps she's going to be a future prime minister of Canada. She certainly has the iron will to make it happen. Unfortunately, despite how much of a great character she is on paper, like all the other black female characters on Degrassi, she was written poorly in a lot of instances on the show, and the show regards her quite fandom regards her quite disdainfully compared to other members of her class. And it's really depressing because Liberty is played by a very light skinned actress, Sarah Barble Tisher or Fisher. And it's just she in a weird way she definitely benefits from colorism compared to the other black female characters in your universe and our universe, since she still had a lot more screen time, but in the same way she was still subjected to misogynoir.
Of course, of course.
Now,
Liberty. Oops, sorry.
no, now your feelings.
Oh yeah. Liberty is a character that I've actually always liked. I'm grateful that I've always liked her. Definitely had a crush on her as a kid. Like, as I should. She's very pretty. And she's always, and like she's just like, really, I always thought she was like a great character because like, I like a lot of the things that you said. I saw myself in her, like as someone who like, grew up nerdy, awkward, and whatnot. Like, her crush on JT reminds me of like my crush on people growing up and whatnot. And I always thought she had this like, like I always thought like, like I think like kind of like, characters who are like initially hopeless romanticists like always have my heart because I relate to that. But it's just like also I just love Liberty's intelligence. I love that like, I really love that the smartest character on the show was a black girl, that it was a black character. And I think like really but I think really like growing up I had to like as I like grew older I really needed to learn how to separate. I feel like a problem with a lot of the fandom that we'll get into with Liberty, even if they like Liberty, they can't really separate her from JT. And like it's just like it really feels like when they like Liberty they just say, oh, they like JT and Liberty and whatnot. I think like growing up, like since I was like Liberty was initially my all-time favorite Degrassi ship when I was a little kid. It was like forgive me if there's any background noise, by the way, there I am living on a college campus. But I feel people really should have like really need to like separate Liberty from JT and look at Liberty as our own, because that's definitely something you should challenge yourself to look at Liberty as our like on our own, because that's something that the show definitely didn't want to do until they actually killed. It took them killing him off in order to like make us look at Liberty of her own. So I think like it's very important to shine like spotlight on her just as a character, because she is a character that really is like, I think she's like really kind of like the stepping stone on how the Degrassi fandom treats black people and whatnot. And especially when you consider, like you said, she benefits from colorism. And it's kind of like, upsetting to see so many people treat her terribly because they're treating someone who is light skinned, who's very light skinned, terribly. You can't even imagine how they're going to treat somebody like Marisol or Shay like later on in those seasons.
And it's so interesting because Shay is so similar to Liberty herself. Like she's like her successor, and to be honest, she actually was a more well written character than Liberty, and only because she was allowed to, only because the next class writers finally woke up and this finally woke up and it's just a shame and that Chase gets more hate like
Yeah,
and this Shay still gets hate by people saying that she's boring, stuck up, annoying. A lot of it's for the same reasons as Liberty. Oh, she's stuck up, she's horrible, she treats her boyfriend like trash, she's a horrible friend, and she is just so miserable and nauseous and brings nothing to the show. And it's like, okay, so you hate you hate Marisol for her perceived promiscuity, but you and for being a bitch and for being this bully and stuff. But Shay, who's like almost who's more introverted, more shy, and has more development, without that more development, you also hate. It's weird.
exactly. It's actually when you consider that Shay is probably we'll get to this later, but I feel like Shay is the best written black female character on the show, potentially best written black character on the show in general.
Yes, and yeah, it just makes me. It's just so weird.
Of course, of course, of course.
Next, next is part two, which we're pretty much already been going into. But three, how the show mistreated Liberty. A year ago, I made a thread pointing out the similar ways that Liberty and Claire Everest were depicted and written, but how Liberty gets more hate than Claire, despite how similar characters were, and how the show treated Liberty way worse than Claire. Like Claire, both Liberty and Claire are smart, intelligent, ambitious, like queens, and who 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 had to go through a teen pregnancy, who were on a student council, who were the more shy and introverted compared to their friends at first, but grew into more assertive women. But Claire was taken much more seriously as a character. Like Liberty, she was pretty much a joke character for a lot of her time on the show. Like, and also, for a random side note, for any Claire fans listening to his video, this is not a Claire hate video. Like, please don't interpret this as Claire hate. When she's my fifth favorite character, I promise you, I don't hate Claire. but um, but as a black woman, I have every right to critique her character with some nuance when it comes to how her as a white female character was treated in comparison to Liberty. Like for while Claire had this great support group of friends from Jump, Liberty didn't have friends supporting her. Her friends mocked her. Emma thought less of her. Manny thought less of her. Like JT and Toby were meh. Like JT herself. JT is like, we'll get into him. So enough, but she really didn't have friends in her corner backing her consistently other than Toby. Like Claire, she had Allie, she had Connor, she had Jenna after season 12. Like, I mean, that's like the only like friend, and she, that's an interesting friendship. But yeah, Claire had Adam, she had Katie, she had all these people like who was ready to like go to war for her. But while Liberty, those supposed friends of her didn't really give a damn about her. like Manny, I love her, but I can't really look past the way that Manny want to hang out with Liberty whenever she was beefing with Emma, and then and would like make fun of her too, and then also like the way Manny only for Liberty a birthday party to get over Craig. It's weird. All right, tell me, how do you feel about Liberty's friendships on the show?
I feel like definitely like, Liberty's friendships they're all very rough. So Emma should go without saying. It really felt like, a phrase I like to go by, like a question like I like to go by. Are the characters friends or are they the main characters? And that's how I feel about Emma and Liberty. And so because I felt like really how it was very like despicable to really see how like, like kind of like the disgusting treatment of like, Liberty in season 4, where Emma wasn't interested in Chris anymore. And the only reason she decided to like, go up to like, like still act interested, if I recall correctly, was because of the fact that Liberty was interested in him, and like he was interested in Liberty. So like, she didn't want people to think that like he like, that like Liberty was like above her or something like that. And it was really, really despicable and whatnot. And honestly, I don't really consider Liberty and Emma to be good friends as much as the show wants to believe that. I don't think that. But here's where, and while like Emma's treatment is very clear, Manny is, I feel that's something like, like you touched upon this as well. Manny is often like, I feel like the criticism of Manny and Liberty's friendship is like very understated, because you brought all of them up, like, you brought all of them up perfectly, because it always like Manny, of course, Manny being, arguably the show's most popular character next to maybe Eli himself. She obviously like, there's a lot of people who just don't like really like, who don't criticize her. And not only that, Manny has a lot better moments to like, a lot better moments with Liberty than Emma does. Like I will give Manny credit on how she, really like stood up for Liberty there, and like in season 4, after Emma like said that terrible thing about her. Like I can give Manny credit there. But like you said, Manny still wasn't necessarily the best friend of Liberty, rock this town. Like you said, she threw the party to like, threw Liberty's party just to get over Craig. But also, she didn't even, like you said, she didn't even know it was Liberty's birthday. But also, Liberty mentioned in that episode that they barely talked that entire year. So it really like, felt like, that even like with the positives Manny does bring to Liberty, and maybe Manny was like the best friend that Liberty had like in the show. It still wasn't like very like, appropriate, very like, very, very like positive, and it still wasn't the most positive thing out there, when it comes to like, when it comes to what was good for her. As well as like, I think like there's other things, like for example, like, Toby, like, I'm a Toby apologist, but like, I do definitely think like Toby's treatment of Liberty can get a little iffy at times and whatnot. Like really like, kind of like the way he was acting towards her in We Built This City, how it really felt like he was like, trying to like, that he felt like he was owed her, that she like, owed them something which she didn't. And of course like the big like, and of course like, and while I do like definitely like their dynamic as like a friendship and whatnot, there are still issues with that. And of course, like, where we get to, and of course, like, we're gonna get to JT in a minute, because that's like a really big picture there.
Yeah, like it's so like Emma and like we all eh, anyone who's like slightly critical of Emma Nelson has dragged her for this, but like I will still say my 2 cents is that Emma, like this, with all the way she prided herself as a feminist, she still fell in trap and unconsciously fell into that white feminist trap about how how she how she can support black how she can support other she can support non-black people, support black people as long as they don't steal her shine. Like just the way that she just dogged Liberty out in the Sheen, and that with the Chris scene or season before where Liberty was trying to talk to her, and but Emma just told her to shut up to her face so she could fight Alex with the Karen haircut. And it's just the way Emma was just so comfortable like disrespecting Liberty and just thought herself as progressive, but yet she was still mad at the idea that her black ex-boyfriend, who she didn't even like anymore, and was interested in her black nerdy friend that she didn't really like. Like it just so speaks volumes how like it's a juvenile look on the very like dark history between white and black women in real life, where Emma felt threatened by Liberty getting any more attention than her. She felt threatened at the idea that this black that her black exes would go back to black girls after her because she's just so perfect while Liberty's just such a nerd. And it was just so sick, and like it was it also annoys me that the show, and like that's why I didn't really care when Liberty like hooked up with Damien behind Emma's back. Like, yeah, Damien's an irreverent loser, but Emma treated her like shit their whole friendship at their whole time they're at Degrassi together. Like, why should I care that Emma when Liberty gets her lick back?
Yeah, Damien is the one black character we will not defend for everybody listening.
Yeah,
Uh,
Damien's just for one thing, his actor was friends with Aubrey, and Aubrey's kind of a loser. So, well, not kinda is.
exactly. We will not defend Damien. We will not defend Damien. But
Brought
I
nothing to the show. He dick has no personality. Uh,
somehow came in and just dated like the main, like the big three girls on the show, like in one season, mind you.
what
Uh,
a slot.
but like, yeah, let's slut shame Damien. But no, but like I think like really Degrassi could have like if they had like black writers, it would have been great to like go forward with like a white feminist like storyline. I think that would have been great for like a lot of like like Emma specifically, but a lot of like but a lot of like women, but a lot of like female like white female characters because like a lot of them did show like trace of like white feminism that was like really like translated onto the fandom, but we can get to that later. My question to you is, what did you think about Emma's about like the episode in season one where Emma thought that there was something going on between Liberty and Armstrong in like in regards to like their friendship?
So I have such complex feelings on this, and I for just so we are all clear, don't nobody jump me for misinterpreting what I'm saying. I am not. This is the one thing where I don't think Emma was being intentionally malicious. She was just being Emma, and that is actually Terry's fault that the rumors got to how it was. Like my issue was not that Emma felt that Emma the felt wanted to protect Liberty from being sexually abused or what she thought was an inappropriate relationship, because Emma's first ever storyline as a main character is her getting nearly kidnapped and raped by a child predator that she met online. Like that's gonna be traumatic for any 12-year-old, and her trauma response to her response to Liberty and Armstrong, what made sense. What I don't like is how this episode established that Liberty had a learning disability with dyscalculia, and we never really see any of it. We
Yep.
never get that established ever again. Like they basically use Liberty's disability. They basically used Liberty as a plot point and not as a character. Like, do we ever get her storylines of her struggling about that? Or because we know Liberty, one of Liberty's flaws is that she's a perfectionist. And do we ever get storylines about her trying to manage for her disability? No, it's because that was just there to prop up a white girl's storyline trauma.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think really it's just like it was a missed opportunity for Liberty for her being like, not just necessarily just not just her being a perfectionist, but also her being like, black and really having to like of course work being her like her being a black woman having to work like, 10 times harder than anybody else. I think that's something that would have been amazing to go into, especially when you consider like, her background for parents, how her parents, how like her dad is like a very like, like is a lawyer, is like, successful. Did we ever figure out what her mom does? I'm not remembering.
I don't know. And like it's just and like you're right that to be like it's bad enough being black and a girl, but to be black, a girl, and disabled, like that's a whole nother can of bricks. Like I and the pressures to, and like because I have the whole vibes that with Liberty and Danny's family that they're the type of black people that are eternally that are bougie and eternally racist because they feel like they have to be perfect because to not be like those ghetto hood blacks and that Liberty was probably felt that was probably another reason why Liberty's reflections because she felt like she didn't have that she had to be better than what the black people that you see on TV and it was just we could have so much that could have been an incredible arc with her to real with Dan and with Danny too who but we just didn't get that. It makes me mad. Like that's why, as much as I have my sympathies with Emma during that storyline, I still don't like it.
Exactly. Exactly. Like I completely agree. Maybe like, it could have been like a cool storyline with maybe like, Liberty and like an actual relationship with Chris Sharp. I will not be calling him Chris. I will be calling him Chris Sharp because you can't just call him Chris. It's just like it's a combo. But all jokes aside,
Sharp. It's like saying tribe and not a tribe called Quest, or a pimp and not a pimp named Slipback.
exactly, exactly. But I think like maybe like that could have been like really cool. Just seeing like, seeing maybe a relationship between like her or Chris Sharp. I would say Towers, but Towers is kind of like a character who literally never spoke. But like, I think like maybe seeing like something like that where like, the relationship between like the two of them like could like, result in many like, like you saw how like, obviously like it could like result like you kind of saw how like, how like, her parents like, were didn't like, like JT at all. Like you saw that. So like and like if and like with your idea, Mari, of like her of like maybe her parents being like bougie, like trying to be like like a quote unquote a superior black person. I think something like that would have worked with like maybe a possible relationship with Chris, but we can like speculate and theorize like all we want. But yeah,
Yeah, and it's just it like it's just and like Liberty was not a perfect friend. Like, yeah, she hooked up with Damien behind his back, but Emma deserved it, so I don't care about that. And like, I'm not like I don't like the way the show tried to gaslight us into thinking that they were BFFs this whole time, and afterwards, no, they didn't like each other. Emma thought she was above Liberty, and Manny wasn't like Manny was a better friend, but only marginally better and like it's just goofy and now good thing that you brought up the romance rise because here we go my feelings on Liberty's romantic relationships compared to Claire's while Claire was despite being seen as nerdy and stuck up at first she had clear admirers from day one like three like she Claire was involved in like 50 love triangles. Boys worshipped her, fell over each other to get her, and she was just constantly as this most beautiful girl on the planet. Dave initially ranked her above Allie as the hottest girl in Degrassi. Liberty, meanwhile, her romances were her main love interest constantly demeaned her until he's been ran through by her by his other female characters at Degrassi. Like he like JT, like he wasn't obligated to return his feelings for her, but he was rude as shit and told her like thought she was like thought of her as lower than the dirt on his shoe, and it just felt so gross to have. And like people keep saying, well, it's because he was 12, and I don't think it was a race thing because all nerdy girls are treated like that. It's like that's not true. Like again, Claire,
Yeah.
and like even there's not really excuse because I was treated like that at school by boys. Boys thought I was disgusting, and like it just sticks with you. And like when you know that when you know how when you know how black women are regarded, and even little black girls are seen by the world, it's not really just something that can be played off as oh they're just kids, and like it and like it was just sinister. Like Maya was kind of nerdy, dorky, introverted, and did she get treated like if she was 14? Did she get treated like dirt? Like was she boys were falling over for her too? Like Liberty, meanwhile, Liberty gets that, has to deal with that, has and like she gets to be the post Liberty gets to be the poster child of how nobody thinks black girls are pretty and worth it, and how her and how JT he literally didn't want Liberty until him and Manny broke up, or when it was clear that Paige didn't want him, like his two like non-black girls, and that happens, and he gets to when they actually are together. The show and they show froze Liberty into this pregnancy plot, and where they go out of their way to make her look like she like all bitchy and mean, and like oh how could she mistreat JT like this? Like they try to make her this villain. Where if you really look at the relationship history prior to them getting together, she had every right to be worried of how he was going to mature for their baby. Like he literally was bragging about their sex life at the movie theater. And like JT was not this mature angel that people think he was. Like JT abandoned Toby twice, was regularly immature. Like him and all these other characters are making ignorant comments about Muslims and don't believe the hype. Like and with all the way he treated her, Liberty, I would also be insecure, not willing to trust that, and like have trust issues about my boyfriend, how my boyfriend would be as a daddy to our child. And like JT had to grow up, and I will give him credit for that. He did, but I don't like how the Liberty was a side character and a villain in her own pregnancy storyline. Claire was never. Claire did not get treated that way. Claire was the center of attention, like she always is during a pregnancy plot. And and again, she was the care for her daughter than like the Tears Claire scene, which that was whatever, but that was the one blind spot. But other than that, like Claire, you get to see her fears, her insecurities, her worries, her her struggling to think how this is going to affect her life. Liberty, like it's all near the whole storyline is nearly told through JT's eyes, and it's disgusting. Like, how is it that the person who's actually pregnant, who's actually in danger, who's actually going to be, who's actually in danger of dying in childbirth because of the high maternal death rate for Black women in childbirth, how is that person not the center of the storyline, but her white baby daddy is? It makes me so mad. Like, and people point out, well, Jenna and Claire also gave birth or had pregnancy plots were in B plots, but I was like, were they treated as poorly as Liberty though? Liberty barely got any death during her pregnancy plot. She was just the show just wanted to make her look bad, while JT was the good guy, and like it, and even then, even with all of her like rudeness and meanness to JC during that JT, sorry JT during that plot, she still was willing to give up her family life to be with JT to help raise their baby. She was willing to keep she was going to stand she was willing to stand against her parents for JT. But do people mention that when they talk about this plot? No, it's Liberty was so mean, and my poor sweet innocent JT deserved better than that evil black bitch. Like it's just annoying.
Exactly.
And Liberty, and when like JT got a job, Liberty was appreciative until he started selling drugs. And while I understand Jace how that plot affected JT's mental health and how he truly helped and he truly struggled, selling drugs was absolutely not a good idea because, I mean, dr- being a drug dealer is just not a safe lifestyle.
Yeah,
Like,
especially like,
it's a miracle.
endangering.
Like, it's a
Sorry.
miracle. Like, I'm honestly am shocked that when JT got died and got stabbed, that wasn't a reason why he got murdered because it's literally drug dealing is not a good business. Like, I understand why Liberty was pissed about that because you're really putting all three of our lives in danger. And
Exactly.
then JT had the nerve to shame her for wanting to get with their baby for wanting to get with their baby at first when he was the one that didn't want that he was the one that didn't want to push for adoption at first.
Exactly. Exactly. And like, especially with like, especially with like, JT like being a drug dealer and putting like, his black family, in danger and whatnot. And also I think something that I also wanted to bring up is that I really thought about was the was accidents will happen, where JT is still acting like a dick to Liberty, even when Liberty has already like, moved on to Sean. Because at this point, like he's still like, I think like I should watch the episode before like, recording, but I just thought about it and it really like, it really showed how, because it like JT was still acting like a dick. I think at one point he even warns Sean about her or like jokes
He
about.
does.
Yeah, exactly. And that just kind of proves like, because at that point, what's even the excuse? Like you can say, like, in the early days, maybe you can say, oh, like, oh, he's like a little kid or whatever. Still not an excuse, but still, like you can say that. I can at least get that. But like he's like he's in high school and like he's like putting his nose into like a situation, into like a whole nother dynamic of like, of that like doesn't involve him. Like, JT in his mind, he got what he wanted. Like a lot of people always say, like, maybe at that point that's when JT was starting to like have feelings for Liberty. Maybe, but that doesn't really matter because she's still being treated like shit. And like, like at like JT at that point, he got what he wanted and he's still messing with her. So you can't blame anybody for really like, not really caring for JT and his like, dynamic with Liberty because of like scenes like that. Now he's like just a complete like, asshole and whatnot. Because like by the time like really watching JT's interactions with Liberty in season 3 is very insufferable. Like at least with season 1 and season 2, while it wasn't necessarily the best, there was still some pretty like there was still some pretty cute moments between them when they were younger. And
Yeah.
so yeah, exactly. Like, like I think like, like for example, like them, like, kind of like, like really like their chemistry was really good in those seasons. Like, I like, I remember there's like actually the lead scene in the final episode of season 1 where like, he actually kisses her on the cheek and whatnot.
Mm.
And yeah, and
That was they actually had their first kiss in season one at a deleted scene
exactly.
where JT kissed her while he thought he was on E, and that like believe he did secretly have feelings for her to extent, but it was just very it just he it's just very yucky because again like again like he was vicious to Liberty even when she didn't like him anymore because like do part of it is probably because he was jealous that she was finally moving on from him, and that's also that's a little bit of that's a bad can of worms on its own because I'm pretty sure that every girl can relate, like a lot of women can relate to where like you had this guy in your grade middle school that like dogged you out and treated you like shit, made fun of you until and then they slide into your Facebook messages like 15 later like, hey, so I actually liked had a crush on you this entire time, but I didn't know how to react to it properly. Like it's still bad. And the thing that I didn't really think about until like a couple months ago that if this was Dave and Claire, like if Dave, because Dave has a lot of similarities to JT, that if, and as we already established, Claire and Lemony are very similar. If Claire had, they were in seventh grade, middle school, and Claire had a crush on Dave, and he repeatedly dogged her out to her like shit, um, constantly made fun of her to and behind her back. People will use it as another excuse to say Dave is an evil monster that should have been killed off. And I just want, white women who are into this podcast to come on here to just, I just want to know like what just admit that you guys would have thought that, because LOL white feminism. But like it's depressing because I used to really love Jeopardy as a kid because I love opposite attract couples.
Same
And
here.
when they finally did get together in season 4, they were like perfect. They were so cute and sweet, and like you've had this sense with JT where he finally started to appreciate Liberty for what he was, and he respected her. And then season 5 threw it all in the garbage, and it's just depressing because like I still ship Jeopardy, but only the season 4 version of themselves, and it's hard to think because like the 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 thing is that is season 3 made it explicitly clear that he was jealous. Like if they had Liberty Jeopardy in a love triangle with another guy where it was JT fighting with another guy over Liberty, I that would have made the relationship arc like so much better because you'll finally see like wake up in JT's eyes that hey, maybe Liberty can do better than me, and I have to prove that, and I can't lose that now. Like it would have been perfect. It probably would have been Liberty. It probably would have been a JT Liberty Toby love triangle, which would have been messy. But I personally think that if Liberty like dated, like if Sean returned Liberty's feelings and accident happened, they dated, like you would see like a very like dark side of JT come out, but which would have been entertaining because we both know, and I'm sure all our viewers know that he would not be able to take Sean in a fight. If it came down to
Absolutely
it.
not.
Yeah. And as for other Liberty's love interests, like Claire gets to have like all these like intense like relationship where guys are very into her. Like all Liberty's like love interests are like her friend sloppy seconds. Like JT dated Manny before her. Towers, he's not really a main character. He was irrelevant as fuck, so we don't really know much about Towers. So like yuck. Damien was run through by two of her best friends before he decided, oh, I want Liberty now. She's so hot. And then there's Toby, who Toby was implied to have crushes on both Emma and Manny. But and so then it's season 6 when JT dies, now he's all about Liberty. And it's just yuck, 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 yuck. Like, come on, like why couldn't Liberty have at least one interest that was into her first? That was all about her first before her friends.
Exactly. And like seeing how like a lot, because you see the impact that Claire has on, you know, that Claire has on characters that like you see like, you think it's like a lot of people, feel like represented because of like, seeing like, Claire, someone who started out very nerdy and shy, really go on to really become like, this character who's like, who's wanted by guys and they feel like represented by it, but like Liberty doesn't get that treatment. She doesn't get that, despite being literally gorgeous and whatnot. Like, it really isn't until like hell, it doesn't even like it really isn't too, and it really feels like like that's why I'm also really not a fan of kind of like I can go do a whole like side rant on this on the idea of like glowing up and whatnot, because I would say, did you glow up or were you like a middle school student? But like I don't like while like obviously Liberty looked very gorgeous come season 7 in her prom dress. I don't really like the idea of people saying like, oh, she was like ugly before, because no, she was a kid. Like she was a child. She's someone who's like growing up. Why are you judging a child's attractiveness? Like, and Like I feel like, like you said, like, one of those, like, one of those situations where it's just like, where one of those situations where people were like, the guys who were mean to you in middle school grow up, and all of a sudden they're like, oh hey, what's up, and all that stuff.
Yeah, like they really dropped the ball, and like I just hate, and like I could go, and like when they broke up for good after the pregnancy, like then there's the whole love triangle with Mia in season 6, which I in recent years I've been willing to defend Mia as a person, but as a character, I still like dislike her to a degree because of this. So, in an effort to like make Liberty look even more bad, they introduced this pretty supermodel, conventionally attractive like white girl in season 6 to make who like her is a teen mom but got to keep her baby, decided to keep her baby, which is kind of dangerous considering she was 13 when she gave birth to Isabel. But she's so sweet and caring, and JT constantly brags about how pretty she is, and to compare to his unattractive ex girlfriend Liberty, and it's just so ill. Like even and then like as much as people like heavily romanticize the oatmeal line, like I find it disrespectful because to me, like even though JT on the show Curtis was still in love with Liberty, like to this day, he still like he could not they could not have him like respect like refer to her as like respectful terms. Like, yes, I love that he was the only person in friend group to remember that it was her birthday. Like, yes, that I love how he called her beautiful, but why but was still why still have him call her demeaning terms? And like and then even after when he died, they have Mia saying, well, to Liberty, well, obviously I meant more to him because he literally called you a walking talking computer or whatever, and it's just ugh. Like I wish Liberty was written by black people.
Exactly. And like I think like, I compare, okay, this is going to sound like a weird comparison, and so I'm not going to spend like too much time on it, but I compare like JT's death to Brian Griffin's death from Family Guy. And here's what I mean by that. In that episode of Family Guy, Brian, it felt like, Brian like reverted back to the character we all know and love for simply that episode. So when he died, we felt like we didn't, really, they tried to make us forget about all of the asshole, like the negative things about his character over the years. JT was kind of the same way because they like, JT and Liberty, like there was, and because like literally the episode of, like, like an episode like where it was like, I think it was, Eyes Without a Face. I think that was the episode with Darcy. Like JT and Liberty, they got into a conflict about the whole like, daycare at Degrassi, and then once again they made Liberty the villain. They said like, like they had JT go off her at the end saying like, oh, I did my best, so you have no right to be mad at me and all that stuff. Like they were beefing, and like they forget, and like, and but then when it's time for Rock This Town, when it's time for the episode where JT died, they want to make you remember all the good things about him. They want to make you remember how he's the only one that remembers, like, Liberty has Liberty's birthday. Oh, that is Liberty's birthday. How he is like really like at the moment, like if you watch that episode in isolation, you would not remember all of the bad things JT was still saying about her up until that moment, because he was very sweet to her, and they purposely made it that way so we feel bad when he, died later that episode.
Yeah, like it pisses me off a lot. Like it's just Liberty deserve like she it makes me so damn mad because we all like you and I both know that Eli's a very controversial character, and that a lot of people who don't like Eli will pick apart anything and everything he does to Claire, he did with Claire, even if he didn't have no malicious intent to still twist him into the bad guy. Like, but if boy, like if this was Claire if Claire was treated the way Liberty was, Claire Stans would have probably burned down will burn down that studio.
Exactly.
Like
Burn down.
whatever the Canadian equivalent to the National Guard would have to step in to Toronto because Claire Stans would have rioted by like it's just so bad. Like if she was romantically treated as badly as Liberty was, like again, I love Liberty for what they could have been and what they was briefly was, but it's so they're they're such a poorly written couple on Liberty's end, and it perpetuates harmful like ideals about the desirability of Black girls. It it just and like they should have had her in a relationship outside JT in season 3. Like her and Sean should have been a legitimate three. Should have been a legitimate thing. Her and if not her and Tower should have been an actual character because we could have seen how her character was. We could have seen her building herself up without JT instead of falling over and being desperate for his love for like 4 seasons and just being demeaned. Like it just makes Black girl like it just reinforces the idea that Black women are so like ugly and unattractive and undesirable that we're always desperate for love because we're too worthless to have any real love on our own. And it's both depressing, harmful, and just pathetic. Like Liberty should have had better love interest, and it's annoying that she didn't. And like as much as I love Claire, it's just really bad when you just look at the two of them. Like Claire honestly didn't need to be constantly the center of attention from guys. If like if she if we're gonna play the angle that Liberty being treated like that is not really a big deal because she's a nerd, then Claire should have been treated the same way, dogged out the same way by guys.
Exactly. And I think I think personally, I think something else is like we touched upon, kind of her comparisons to Maya as well. I think there also is some type of there also is something else to be said with with because obviously both Maya and Liberty lost their love interest. They lost their boyfriend, and their boyfriends died. And we see Maya, of course, nothing against that arc. Very one of the best things Degrassi has written. But we see Maya that was very early on in her tenure as a character, and that affected her. That whole storyline affected the rest of her arc, and we saw still ramifications of it all the way to her final season in Next Class before she left and before the show got canceled. But literally with Liberty went through something traumatic as well. She found her boyfriend, the person she loved, dead. Like she found him, she was the one to find him after he's been stabbed. And we don't really get much storyline, much much like storyline besides the immediate episode afterwards where she is still being dogged out by Mia. And we get something in season 7 where she gets mad at Derek for what he says about JT, and we built the city, the final episode of season 7 where she where we once again still kind of talk about what happened. But that was really of course Degrassi's no stranger to really breathing over traumatic moments, but that was in the this especially considering how unfair Liberty was already treated, how unfair really how little screen time she got, how little perspective she got. We didn't see much of what we saw a little, but we didn't see a much of how JT's death affected her, because again, she found him. She found him and whatnot, but we didn't see any of that. We didn't see any ramifications of her mental health. I would have loved to see a storyline where, especially considering they had Liberty go to college on the show. I would have loved to see a storyline where she where like she really addresses like that trauma, but also she like starts to like really like learn how to not necessarily move on because you don't move on for something like that, but like, finding love after such a after like losing like someone that young, because like it's not like easy to lose like someone you love, like a partner. It's not easy to lose a partner when you're just 17 years old on her birthday. Like I completely forgot about that, on her birthday as well.
Like part three is, well, part four is, of course, the storylines that we already started to get into, but officially we're in the crux where we talk about Liberty's storylines.
Of course.
And I could, and again, I'm going to keep calling back to Claire because they're very similar. Claire gets all these 50 million storylines about all these great, fantastic storylines, from her standing up to the chef, to her standing up to discovering her sexuality of the vibrator, to her exploring her sexuality with Declan, and this whole thing of Eli, like her struggle of her parents divorcing, her dealing with having a boyfriend that's mentally ill, her dealing with her dealing her dealing with being sexually assaulted, writing a newspaper, all of her like relationship drama, having cancer, having to getting pregnant, dealing with a miscarriage. What does Liberty get in comparison? As I touched on this before, she was pretty much a plot point. She really didn't get a lot of like good plots on her own. Like she's a plot point in the Armstrong storyline. Her dyscalculia is a plot device, nothing more. And then with these other itty bitty storylines like her and JT, Spinner and Toby, and the Pringles competition that wasn't really anything serious. Her being the captain of the hockey girls hockey team and being controlling, that wasn't really a serious storyline. That was a joke plot made to look made designed just to make her look bad. There was a whole JT and her storyline of don't believe the height, where she discovers that he's a really good seamstress and makes fun of him for it, and like that's not really a serious plot. The whole disaster with Sean and accidents will happen, not a serious plot, and her relationship is treated as a joke. Um, season four, early season four, where she has a crush on Chris, and Emma ruins that because she can. She's not really taken seriously in that. Now, Secret now, and then there's her just being willing. She's just her just in our house. She's just there to set up JT and Manny. And it wasn't until like Voices Carry where we really see a more serious side of her. We finally get to see her take a more of a serious side of herself, where her and JT protest Radich because of changes he tries to make to her play. And like I love that plot. Is my fair Liberty plot because she finally got something good for her character. And then we get to meet her brother Danny, who Danny is probably the person who supported her the most on this show. Like he's always a writer for her. And
Does Danny have to choke a dude? Does Danny have to choke a dude? Love that line.
yes, like I love Danny. And it's like we're finally there. And then of course, as I talk relationship plot, the pregnancy plot happens. And my issue, and like another thing is like I feel like another way the fandom's response to this pregnancy storyline is full of misogyny. Or like I know that a lot of people think that because Liberty is this genius black girl, is this genius black girl, and she's supposed to be strong and intelligent all the time. Like she's not supposed to have moments of being invulnerable or being a normal teenager, because people blame her more for JT being dumb enough to use a king size condom and JT himself. And it's like, hold up, is he not the one with a penis? Like
Exactly.
it it was his responsibility to use the right size condom, how is this, and he didn't tell, like, how is this Liberty's fault? Like, because she's like, yes, she's a smart, and she probably, I don't know, I'm a virgin, so I can't go into details of that, but is it not JT, was it not JT's responsibility to use the king size condom? Like, it's his job, not Liberty's. Like, another way how the fandom treats JT like the child he is, while aging Liberty like 40 years.
Exactly,
And it's
exactly.
goofy. And we already know, because like, and I keep seeing people in the fandom keep trying to tie this into trying to act like Jenna and Claire went for the same thing in their pregnancy plot lines. So it's like, okay, okay, yes, Jenna is pretty much useless after she had the baby. Like, I'm sorry, she is, but before, when she was pregnant and after she had Ty for until she gave him up, it was she still had agency in her own pregnancy plot line. We got to see her side more than Casey's, actually, because she was the one pregnant. And even with like Liberty's postpartum depression about being forced to of having to give her baby is relegated to one plot, which is a good plot line because we see how, because it's a good plot line, especially of her bonding with Derek about giving her baby up for adoption. But
There are
Jenna,
some
at
good
least
moments.
Jenna, we see more depth of Jenna's plot after Jenna's arc actually gave up Ty, solely with the fact that it shows her and Casey's. We see how the downfall of how her and Casey's relationship fall apart and how she struggles with depression because she, after she has Ty, she feels so lonely, depressed, and isolated. And Casey pouring around, like, it's not the same. Like, she at least got more than what Liberty had. And
Exactly.
then there's Bitterest Pill, which honestly I do love that plot line because I think the way Liberty's grief with JT was handled beautifully. And honestly, if you think late Liberty never cared about JT and wasn't sad when he died, then go to hell. But you actually didn't watch the show and you're watching with your eyes shut. But that was beautifully done, and that was a good plot. Like, we see her grieving him in death, but then, and we see how her and Toby, like, being attracted to each other's trauma response. That was good. And then season 7, we get the bullshit with Damien. We get people, the purple dragon, the chicks at Purple Dragon, like, basically saying she's ugly. Um, she's not really there. Like, season 7, she's not doesn't really have much of a presence. Like, great, the scene where she fights Lucas because he disrespected JT. That was a perfect scene, but other than that, ill. She's just not really doing much. And then we built to say she's the villain, so we can feel sorry for Emma White Feminist Nelson, Emma White Feminist Nelson again, because, oh, Liberty, because they play into the Jezebel of this, of they try to paint Liberty as this like they paint Liberty as, they make Liberty the villain by having her hooking up with Dame behind Emma's back, like playing into the Jezebel. Black women are like promiscuous or hero steal your man stereotype, and it's like, okay, Emma literally cheated on 2 of her boyfriends, has had like 70 relationships before this happened. Like, why should we care about about this happening to Emma? Why what black woman do I have to side with Emma? And
Of course.
it's really goofy because they could have done a better job exploring of ending Liberty's like time at Degrassi than just having her be all messy and stuff. Like, where the graduation scene, her valedictorian speech was beautiful, but, and I will say that she is a great president. She's a great valedictorian. Like, I'm glad the show gave her that, at least. At least they gave her those 2 things. But I just hate, like, the Damien bullshit didn't need to happen, but it did because the show liked villainizing black people. And then in her last like main storyline in season 8, where she goes into sorority and this deals with racism from her white roommates, sorority mates, that storyline falls flat because, again, like, that's all they could do for Liberty that season.
Exactly.
And then like it's goofy. Like it just doesn't feel hollow. Like I feel like all the racism plots, they don't feel good to me because they don't feel genuine. Like that, like that's the only, like whenever they feel like giving bones to a black character, there's always them dealing with racism, and it's goofy. And then after that plot line, she's just not really relevant. She shows up at the end of Degrassi Takes Manhattan, and and that's it. Like then fast forward to next class where we see her in a more stabilized mindset now, where she's going to law school, she's more confident, like she's just great, and I love that for her. But she just deserved better when she was actually a student at Degrassi. Like, how do you feel about Liberty's plots?
I think like, it's definitely because like here's the thing, like, I'm gonna go back to her pregnancy. We've seen the show through like multiple times show the matter of fact, Jeopardy is the only pregnancy plot where the female character is not given the main perspective. They like, literally Craig is not given any perspective at all in, Manny's abortion plot as that should be. Like, Jenna like always had more like, Jenna, like you said, had more agency in her pregnancy plot. Claire is, Claire and whatnot. She's literally always the most important character. Lola, like, in her abortion plot, like, she like, like Miles doesn't even find out about it till the very end of the episode. And like after that, you only get one conversation about it. So it's always been like, they've always had like they know how to put the woman, have the woman be the central character in her pregnancy plot, and they just didn't do it with Liberty, the black female character. And I think like, and I think like even with like, because like you said earlier, we have the arguments of like, saying, oh well, Jenna gave birth in the B plot. Look at the way that plot was handled versus Claire versus not Claire versus Liberty's like, plot. Like, Craig, like, Craig's like, like in like the episode, I believe like the episode where Liberty gave birth, that was the episode where like Craig, like, it had like Craig had some like got some music deal, right? Or was that the adoption episode, like the episode where she's dealing for postpartum?
That's postpartum and adoption part where she's grieving about where she bonds with Derek, one of his, like, literally the only good thing Derek has ever done his entire career on the show.
Yeah, and that. Oh wait. Okay. I think I remember. Yeah, I think I remember. That's like that was the that was actually the episode where I think it was another Craig plot. I think that was the Crelly Cranny plot. I think, but
Well, isn't it like well, actually, she gives birth and Together Forever, I believe, but it's some other bullshit ass Crowley shit that I don't give a damn about. That's the main fucking plot. Um,
exactly. But yeah, but the point, like, compare like if for the listeners listening out there, watch Together Forever and then watch Extraordinary Machine or Drop
Drop
the
the
World.
World, or even Get It Together, where Claire has to deal with her miscarriage.
Exactly. Like, watch those episodes. The episode, because like literally, Extraordinary Machine, the episode when like the plot, like maybe this is a symptom of like Degrassi, like at that point being like, the episodes basically being an hour long because they're all two parters. But even then, watch the scene where Casey and Jenna give up the baby. Watch how like that scene is shot. Watch how that scene is just like dramatized. It's to their credit, it's an amazing scene, and it's in the B plot, similar to when Liberty gives birth and gives the baby up for adoption. But like, literally when you watch Together Forever, when she gives birth, it's such an afterthought. Like, it's such an afterthought. You barely even like, like literally like, literally like you just see it, like, you just see it happen, and just like you just kind of like forget about it. It's just kind of like there and whatnot. Matter of fact, I think that was the only episode where we saw Liberty like showing. Like, I don't think we saw her really showing in any other episode. And I think like, it's really like also like while we like, do talk about Claire and her, similar to Liberty, I think also like seeing how because there's similarities between like, Jeopardy and Kenna when it comes to their pregnancy storyline and like adoption storyline, like seeing how like, like another thing, seeing how like Liberty gets more hate for like hitting JT with that backpack after finding out that he was fucking dealing drugs versus like the very little hate Jenna gets for like hitting Casey with a goddamn guitar. Like, you see the hypocrisy in like, these pregnancy storylines. These like, you see the hypocrisy in the pregnancy storylines where like, like literally, like I said earlier, every single female character who goes through a pregnancy plot is given the point of view. They're given a lot of screen time, like as they should. And I'm not arguing, and for people with low media literacy skills, no, I'm not arguing that they shouldn't have that, like, that point of view. They absolutely should. But the one Black girl who gets pregnant doesn't have the point of view. And I feel a lot of people, when you talk about how unfair Liberty's writing was, they think like, well, she had the big storyline in season 5. No, she didn't. JT had the big storyline in season 5. That was exactly. Like that was the arc. Like that was like season 5 was the moment that JT finally, because like, like JT, like both JT and Liberty like were kind of like, obviously Liberty treatment was much worse, but like JT also like didn't get like, many big storylines. But like when it came to season 5, they like, and they wanted to give JT a big storyline. It came at the cost of Liberty, a character who was suffering not like just as bad as him, but even worse than him. But like, and like people like, like a lot of people, we feel like, it really feels like the show, like, they follow what the show tells them to follow, which is this character is a villain. And that's like, they like, Liberty was portrayed as a villain so many times, like in her own pregnancy plot, the show, like, and so the audience think that she's the villain and whatnot. You never once see, like, matter of fact, bringing back up Kenna, you like, Casey pretty much gets cut into like the whole, like, there's like in season 11B, Degrassi New Beginnings, there's literally that plot where Casey like, writes that poem about Jenna, and the episode tells you he's wrong. He's in the wrong for it. The episode tells you, and then like the next, I think like the next episode or like the episode after, like, when he goes and visits Ty and he goes off like, on Jenna about it, he's like, again, the show knows he's in the wrong. The show wants you to know he's in the wrong, but they never want to do that with JT.
Yeah, like it makes me mad, and like honestly, like that's why like whenever people like it, I roll my eyes and people try to say like Claire was done so, like, yes, Claire was done wrong by Degrassi in a lot of ways, but still not as much as Liberty. And you guys are just not gonna do that on my watch. Like, no, like Claire got so much more than Liberty got. Jenna, as much as a walking, talking piece of cardboard she is after season 12, it still have more than Liberty in that pregnancy plot. But yeah, like it's just when you compare Liberty's, like Liberty was on that show, was our main character on Degrassi for like 8 seasons, cameoed in other seasons, and her, while I love her so much, she just got shafted so much compared to Claire, and we all know why. Now, for like the final 10 minutes of this video, how would you like? Where let's keep it as cute, short and cute as possible. Like, in like in like 1 minute, how would you improve Liberty's plotline?
That's impossible with me. Okay, but I think I would, of course, like, similar to what we said, you know, giving her the point of view of her pregnancy, but mostly focusing in on what it means for her to be pregnant. Like have this storyline constantly building up. Like for example, season one, like we said earlier, season one can be like, where they establish her being a perfectionist, like her, how she feels like maybe someone like her, quote unquote, can't have dyscalculia. Maybe we can get a storyline where she, like, where her parents just straight up says, because it's common with Black parents, where they would say, no, my child doesn't have a disability. Like, they're perfect. And how that actually harms her, how Liberty inherit that toxic mindset, and how that like really develop, and how that really plays in her pressure from her parents, her like the idea that she has to work 10 times harder, how she needs to be perfect and even more, plays into her being pregnant, how she really, and how that really negatively affects her. And of course, like her trauma after JT's death. And again, like you said, giving her another relationship besides like, JT before they actually officially got together. But that's pretty much it.
Yeah, like with me, like I would have gone way harder into emphasizing her being an outcast and Degrassi, her more storylines of her standing up for herself, asserting herself. Like we would have like more plot lines of her as president because she's like the best president Degrassi ever had. Like just more like just more of her of her like running crap and how of like her being more like I would have had her get diagnosed with autism. Like she could have been an early Connor where we see how the world perceives her as an autistic Black girl. Like her more story, like her pregnancy plot, I would have obviously gave her more of a point of view and like explained her like put more emphasis on why on how this is affecting her as someone who pretty much wants to be perfect who and I would have dealt more with her interests, like her being a bookworm or a writer, like her like what I would have had more. I want would give her more storylines, like Waite's character Carrie showing her activist side, and like because she's so talented in many areas. Like I would have delved into her and Danny's family life, and how the complexities of being of the complexities of them being upper class Black folks and how that affects their mindsets. Like, would it gave her more cute episodes of her and Danny as friends? Or would it gave her more friendship episodes of Emmy and Manny? Would it had her be friends with more characters at Degrassi? Like, I could have felt like Hazel could have been a cute, like, big sister type figure to her. Like, I could have given her way more than the show has. Me and you, and it's so suppressing how we are fans and we still could think of better ways to improve Lily's character than the show did. And when we're not professional writers for now.
Yeah. Yep. For now. But like also like that just like you just gave me like that like idea of like Hazel being like a big sister figure. Like imagine like yeah, Paige and Emma weren't really friends, but like the scene where Paige like helps Emma out with her period. Like imagine like a scene like that, but with Liberty and Hazel. That would have been really cool.
It would have been perfect. Like, why didn't we get more issues of Liberty growing up, like her learning to try on makeup or learning to do hair, or like her trying to figure herself out more, dealing with acne, even. It's all Emma gets all the perfect. Emma and Manny get all the cute little growing pain storylines, and it's annoying. Like,
Exactly.
and thank you to you guys for listening to us rant about this. There'll be more episodes to come because neither of us can ever shut up about anything. Um,
Exactly. Not at all.
like, tell
Especially
us your thoughts about Liberty. Tell us your thought about how Liberty's mistreatment by the show and the fans in the comments. Talk at our DMs, even just let us know your thoughts. Thank you guys for listening to us. Have a great night.
of course, remember to follow us on Little Mistakes on Twitter.
And follow our individual accounts. I am Marisol's Eli on Twitter, and you can find my archive our own account as Black Sansa Stark.
And I am the JC Elliott, 2 L's, 2 T's on Twitter as well.
All right, bye y'all.
See ya.